Hello, 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 ni hao, shalom, alakaim, namaste, hola. Thank you for checking in. As you can tell from, the main tab here, voter fraud, and my thousands of other tabs, sorry about that, we're going to be looking at voter fraud. And I think the best place to start is like explaining it. So the way these videos are going to work, I'm going to look at the conservative side, the liberal side, and then the third party side, meaning like another country in this case, and how what they're reporting on these elections. So this is kind of like a general consensus for both arguments. Like I said, this is definitely like a 1,000 point elevation. It's just to hopefully help you get started on like finding the facts for yourself. So beginning with heritage.org, it's definitely a more conservative website, more conservative foundation. But I felt like they did a good job of explaining like what voter fraud looks like. It's kind of hard to like imagine, like you say, voter fraud, election fraud, whatever, but like what specifically does that mean? And so here are all the different types, right? So false registration, phony. So like making like different accounts or whatever, within your state. So let's say you somehow got a different social security number that like actually existed and it was of eligible voting age. But yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of ifs here, right? But basically these are all like the ideas of like what could have happened. And so that's the position. Now we're gonna move to like the argument and evidence, right? So the idea is like, and I think the best person who talked about this is Giuliani, right? And so this video like is basically him explaining like, yeah, this is what we saw, this is what we heard, and this is what we're hearing now. And I think he says he has something of like however like 200 something pages of evidence, right? Of like personal testimonies of like voter fraud that occurred. And this website also kind of did a good job of pointing to a database of voter fraud instances. But when I got into like so 1,300, right, like, oh, it seems like a decent amount, like, especially if they just got started. But if we looked at the year, right, so like voter fraud that occurred this year so far, we have less than 20, right? And so from my perspective, it's like, well, if we're talking about an election that was decided by like hundreds of thousands of votes, I mean, if so far there's only been less than 20 that have reported, and like that's like coming from the Heritage Foundation, which is a really, like, if they had any evidence, they'd be posting it here, trying to like really hammer that in. But yeah, I mean, as far as like actual evidence goes, there's nothing that I've been able to find. And so that's the thing. I understand where like someone who is very conservative would believe, yeah, the government and all these liberal media, website Washington Post, Forbes, whatever pops up that disagrees, I can understand where they feel like, oh yeah, of course they're anti-Trump. They're saying it's not happening because they're liars and that's what they do. They're fake news. And that's the thing. Like, that's the only like logical, like assuming like there was some major hacker person, and this is kind of like a good place to start. The FBI, right? The government. Their job is to ensure American democracy. I think this is the best place to kind of like really get a firm for like how hard it is to vote legally, right? Even to vote legally, it's really hard. You have to have a social security number and address that's all approved. And now I'm going to kind of move towards the liberal side, right? Like they're basically saying, yeah, it didn't happen. This is just how people voted. And that's the thing. Like when we're looking at the numbers for how many people that are like registered in the database per state, and then how many people actually voted, it's not like there's like an illogical amount, right? Like assuming like say there's like 100,000 people, right, in the state of Nebraska. Like if all of them, if like two-thirds of them voted for Trump, and then like say like more than a half, right? So 66%, and then like 50%, like total votes were counted. Like obviously there would be fraud there, but like that's just not how that works, because when we talk about poll watchers and like there's people from both sides of the room, both conservative and liberal people like in the room watching the polls. So if there was an actual issue like with technology and like video cameras nowadays, like it would have been all over the news. And I know that there's like TikTok, so definitely I saw some stuff on TikTok where it's like TikTok like ballots or something, and it's like it's showing some people, so that was a thing. But like basically I saw some stuff like where they were throwing ballots away and they were on TikTok. But like obviously I don't think it's too hard to believe that people on TikTok would be gathering a bunch of fake ballots and doing XYZ, just giving that visual to make it seem like, oh yeah, all of this is happening. A bunch of younger generation TikTok, so obviously they're more liberal. But as of right now though, I definitely did not find a lot of information, actual evidence that disagrees with the liberal perspective, and unless what Trump's supporter, the conservative side, is saying is true, where like, yeah, the government and every single agency of like media is against Trump. Even Fox News, like when I look at Fox News, um, they didn't have any actual evidence. And I'm talking about, but when I say evidence, I'm talking about like actual recorded, prosecutable, issues of voter fraud, which would definitely be more than 20 to make up for the hundreds of thousands of votes, the millions of votes that Biden won by. And that's just kind of just general Googling pointed towards, that logic. The BBC taking is like they're pretty neutral and they're taking a stance of like just looking at both sides, right? So dead people can't vote. Yeah, I mean like there's a lot of ideas that like dead people are voting and they're using dead people. It's like when someone dies, their record is like immediately updated like within months, and like especially before the election, they make sure to update those databases with obituaries and stuff. And when you have a list of people voting, so this is tabulation. So notice how it's like this is kind of like, oh wow, that's very. If you saw this by itself, it would be like, oh yeah, that I can see that. But like notice the misleading. I guess this was flagged on Twitter or something. And yeah, so this is probably, and that's the thing, like misinformation like this makes its way to powerful people's tweets, and like so anyone can come up with this tweet. I don't know who actually posted it, but like anyone can come up with that and just be talking like lying, and there's no way for someone to be like, oh well there is a way for them to be like, no, that's a lie, but like the people who want to believe that it's true, they can, and it seems legit. You just make sure your language is sounding pretty well spoken, and you come up with false claims, and it's definitely not something that's impossible. And here's like another BBC perspective where they're talking about, okay, so people using Sharpie, so this is false. I mean, that's the thing, like this is a different country, Britain, and check this, read it, and like learn for yourself. But like they're basically also disproving these election claims. Anyways, so that's the third party perspective. My personal perspective, I think, is pretty obvious. I mean, it's hard for me to deny the facts, right? And like assuming that there wasn't like a major like hack, like assuming the FBI did its job, which I really like. I'm not like a network expert, but like from what I understand, basically closed systems like the voting polls, they're are ridiculously hard to infiltrate. And then at that, it's like to actually change the database information, like all the traffic is being. It's like a whole different conversation. But basically, I trust the FBI when it comes to like I think I heard a claim that they're saying this is the most secure election ever, and I would believe that. Anyways, so trusting the FBI and trusting like basically 99% of the information. Like I can't even find anything on Fox News, other than just like pundits, just talking about, he's apologizing. I mean, like, I don't know. It can't. To me, it's like very obvious what the facts are here and where the evidence is, or I guess in this case, the lack of. Anyways, thanks for checking out the video. Kind of lied. It's pretty long, but still, thanks for still figuring this out with me. I appreciate your time and good luck.